Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we will be looking at AQA Alevel Psychology 2024 Paper 1 Exemplar Answers for Attachment, which you need to know for AQA Alevel Psychology. I hope you enjoy this video and find it helpful. Let's get started. Please note that these answers have been produced with knowledge of the mark scheme but have not been approved by the mark scheme themselves. There are 3 assessment objectives, AOs, in psychology. In this video they are color-coded. AO1 Knowledge, purple. AO2 Application, blue. AO3 Evaluation, red and green. Zara's baby, Sunta, is a few weeks old. The rest of the family laugh along as Zara sticks her tongue out at Sunta and Sunta does the same thing back to her. Question 1. Which feature of caregiver-infant interaction does this example illustrate? 1 mark. Reciprocity. The rest of the family also think it's cute when Zara rocks Sunta to sleep and their heads seem to move in time with one another. Question 2. Which feature of caregiver-infant interaction does this example illustrate? 1 mark. Intercational synchrony. Question 3. Describe the concept of a critical period and the concept of an internal working model in the context of attachment. 6 marks. Bowlby proposed that there is a critical, or sensitive, period, which is around 12 months for most infants although can extend up to approximately between 2.5 to 3 years. During this time period an infant's attachment system is active, and therefore if an infant is unable to or cannot form an attachment during this time, then it is unlikely that they will ever form an attachment in their lives, with it being suggested that infants who do not form attachments will end up being socially, emotionally, intellectually, and physically stunted. Bowlby argued that an infant forms a mental representation of their first relationship with their primary attachment figure, known as an internal working model. This internal working model serves as a template or blueprint for what all relationships are like. An infant, whose first experience is a loving relationship with a reliable caregiver, will tend to form a positive internal working model, with the expectation that all relationships are loving and reliable, causing them to become a consistent, sensitive, and responsive caregiver. However, a child whose first relationship involves poor treatment and neglect may expect such treatment from others and will tend to form a negative internal working model, with the expectation that all relationships are abusive and harmful, causing them to become an inconsistent and neglectful caregiver. Depending on what type of internal working model the infant forms, this will affect the infant's later ability to make friends and be a parent. This also provides the infant with an insight into their caregiver's behavior and some level of influence, so a relationship can form between the two. Question 4. Discuss Romanian orphan studies, 16 marks. Rutter et al., 1998, aimed to investigate whether early institutionalization had long-term effects on children's emotional and social development and whether these effects could be overcome with love and care. Michael Rutter and Edmund Sonjugabach, 1998, conducted a longitudinal study and observed the effects of institutional care and privation. They followed a group of 165 Romanian orphans previously been placed in orphanages, aged 1 to 2 weeks old, with minimal adult contact, who were then adopted by UK families as part of the English and Romanian Adoptee (ERA) study. There were 3 conditions in the study. 58 were adopted before the age of 6 months, 59 were adopted between the ages of 6 months and 2 years, 54 were adopted between the ages 2 years and 4 years old. The institutionalized orphans were raised naturally by the loving families who adopted them. Their physical, cognitive, social and emotional development was assessed at ages 4, 6, 11, 15 and 22 to 25 years using standardized testing, interview and observation techniques. They were compared to a control group of 52 British children who were adopted before the age of 6 months within the UK. They found that at the time of adoption, 50% of the adoptees showed signs of delayed intellectual development and were severely malnourished and physically smaller. The control group did not display these deficits. At age 11, the mean IQ of those adopted before the age of 6 months was 102, for those adopted between 6 months and 2 years it was 86, and for this adopted after 2 years it was 77. With those who had been adopted before the age of 6 months catching up with their British counterparts. The variation in the extent to which children recovered from the effects of institutionalization correlated to the age at which they had been adopted. 74% of infants adopted after the age of 6 months showed signs of disinhibited attachment and delayed social problems with peer relationships. 9% of infants adopted before the age of 6 months showed signs of disinhibited attachment. They concluded that the negative effects of institutionalization could be overcome by sensitive, loving, and nurturing care. Separation from carers alone will not cause developmental problems, as the British children who were separated did not display developmental problems. Disinhibited attachment, Rutter, 2006, has explained this as an adaptation to living with multiple caregivers during the sensitive period of attachment formation as a result of poor quality institutional care. Rutter, 2001, conducted a follow-up study and found that problems in attachment, hyperactivity, and cognitive impairment could be linked to institutionalization. This was most apparent on children who endured long periods of institutional care, although about 20% showed normal functioning. Other apparent problems such as emotional problems, peer relationship problems, and behavioral problems were concluded not to be linked to institutionalization. This suggested that specific effects are related to long-term institutional care and only within certain types of people. Therefore, individual differences in children also appear to play a role too in mitigating for developmental problems. A strength of research into Romanian orphan studies and the effects of institutionalization is that it has high ecological validity. There is a large breadth of Romanian orphan research, all of which has drawn similar conclusions. Gardner, 1972, found a lack of emotional care may lead to deprivation, dwarfism, and physical underdevelopment. Other studies have found cognitive development may be negatively affected by emotional deprivation as well as disinhibited attachments. Quinton et al., 1984, found women who had been raised in institutional care tended to be poorer parents themselves and report extreme difficulty in parenthood when compared to a control group reared within the family setting. Lemaire and Audet, 2006, examined the impact of early institutional care on children's attachment and emotional development. Their study focused on 36 orphan children who had been raised in institutions, later placed in foster care and adopted by Canadian families. The psychologists measured their physical health and growth. They found that at the age of 4, they were found to be physically smaller than a control group of children. This difference disappeared by the age of 10, however, and their physical health also improved in line with the control group. This highlighted how recovery from institutional care was possible for physical development. This is a strength because it suggests that early intervention and nurturing environments can significantly mitigate the adverse effects of institutionalization. The consistency of findings across various studies supports the idea that while emotional deprivation can lead to serious developmental challenges, recovery is possible when children receive appropriate care. A limitation of research into Romanian orphan studies and the effects of institutionalization is that it lacks data on adult development. The latest data from the ERA study looked at the children in their early to mid-20s. This means that do not currently have data to answer some of the most interesting questions about the long-term effects of early institutional care. These research questions include the lifetime prevalence of mental health problems and participants' success in forming and maintaining adult romantic relationships. It will take a long time to gather this data because of the longitudinal design of the study, e.g., the same participants are followed over a long period of time. This is a limitation because it suggests that the current findings from the Romanian orphan studies may not fully capture the long-term impacts of early institutionalization on individuals as they transition into adulthood. Without data on adult development, we cannot adequately assess how early experiences in institutions influence mental health outcomes or the ability to form and maintain meaningful relationships later in life. This gap in research limits our understanding of the lasting effects of institutional care and highlights the need for ongoing studies that follow participants into later stages of life. A limitation of research into Romanian orphan studies and the effects of institutionalization is that it is socially sensitive. The results show that late adopted children typically have poor developmental outcomes. Results have been published while the children have been growing up, meaning that their parents, teachers, and anyone else who knew them might have lowered their expectations and treated the adopted children differently. This might even have created a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is a limitation because it suggests that the publication of research findings may inadvertently impact the treatment of late adopted children, leading to lowered expectations from caregivers and educators. Such a shift in perception can hinder the children's development and reinforce negative outcomes, creating a cycle where the children internalize these lower expectations. This highlights the ethical considerations that researchers must navigate when disseminating sensitive findings that could affect the lives of vulnerable populations. A limitation of research into Romanian orphan studies and the effects of institutionalization is that it suffers from cultural bias. Romanian orphans were in a country with poorer education system, healthcare, and a collapsed governmental regime in 1989. This could be argued to be the main contributing factor for under-resourced institutions having children who struggle physically and mentally, not institutionalization itself, when compared to Western institutions which have greater resources for their orphans. This is a limitation because it suggests that the findings from the Romanian orphan studies may not be universally applicable, as they are heavily influenced by the specific socio-economic and cultural conditions of Romania at that time. It raises the concern that the negative developmental outcomes observed in these studies could be attributed more to the systemic issues within the Romanian context rather than the inherent effects of institutionalization itself. This highlights the need for a more nuanced understanding of how cultural and environmental factors can shape the experiences and outcomes of children in institutional care. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Bye.